Hello, and welcome to another Marty's Tutorials. Today we're going to build a website, a web page from beginning to end. We're going to start with some HTML, and we're going to add an external cascading style sheet to format that HTML to the way we like it to look. So let's go ahead and get started. It's always a very good idea when you're building a website or web page to make a little sketch of what you want the page to look like, and that way you can kind of build yourself a roadmap for writing your HTML code. So that's what I've done here. I've made a little bit of a roadmap using Microsoft Paint. I just used a quick simple little drawing to show what I want my page to look like. Now what I'm going to do is going to show you the actual page. Okay, I don't think it's centered. Let me move it over here and center it for you. That's what the page is really going to kind of look like. It's pretty close to the to our mock-up or our roadmap or our drawing. Okay, you can see here in our drawing we have a body which is gray. Okay, that's what we have out here. Body which is gray. We have a header which is blue. In our actual page it's flush to the top. We do have a container which has kind of a grayish background in the back. We have a div which we call nav. We're going to learn why we put the hashtag in front of it. That's how you, when you put an ID in HTML, div equals ID nav, that's how you reference it in cascading style sheets, which is what we're going to talk about today. So when I do my drawing, I like to make sure that I write my divs or the names of my divs with the hashtag to remind me that I've got an ID with each of these divs. There's also, you'll notice that we use a class for selector, and we're going to use a class for one of our list items here, and we're going to use a class called selected. You always reference a ID with a pound symbol. You reference a class with a dot. So I will have a class called selected, so I'll reference that in my cascading style sheets with a dot selected. Alright, so that's my mock-up. Let's go over it real quick. Body on the outside. The next thing is a large div called container. Everything is going to be inside of our container. Within our container we have a header. Notice it has a blue background, some white text. The text is centered. Then we have a div called content. Okay, within the div called content we have two divs called nav and main. We want those to be side by side. We'll show you how to do that in cascading style sheets. And then at the bottom we have a div that we're calling footer, which has kind of some similar formatting to the header, except that the text is not center aligned, it is white. We're also using headings, a heading tag, an H1 tag for this text, and an H6 tag for this text. We'll talk more about heading tags as we write our code. So that's kind of my mock-up of what I want my page to look like. This is kind of what the page looks like, and so this is what we're going to make. But this is all formatted with cascading style sheets. You also notice that around my div called nav I've got a tiny white border to separate it, and around my div called main I've got another tiny white border, and we'll show that when we write our cascading style sheets. Okay, so let's go ahead and start writing our HTML. Hi, welcome back. Let's start coding. This is a cascading style sheet tutorial, but we're going to go ahead and do the HTML right now. We're going to go through it rather quickly, and we're going to keep referring to our image or our roadmap, so to speak, so that we can kind of take a look and see what it is that we want to code. So the first thing we know is we're coding is some HTML. So we're going to put in an HTML tag, and we're going to close the HTML tag. I feel this is a really good technique to close your tags. I forgot the slash. To close your tags right away. And notice that, I don't know if you noticed, but Notepad++ uses the purple to tell you that you've opened a tag and closed a tag. It's a really nice feature. There's other nice features with Notepad++. It really is good for coding HTML, coding CSS, coding JavaScript, whatever it is that you like to code. So I've used my enter key to give my space or some space to our HTML tags, and within the HTML tag, the first thing I'm going to do is put a head tag. And so what is a head tag? Well, what it is not is a header tag. Whoops. For some reason, excuse me, what it is not is a header tag. It's just a head tag. And what the head tag is, it's a place for some housekeeping stuff. And what I mean by that is, this is a place where you might put some meta tags. You might put some stuff for the search engines to find. And you might put the title that you want to appear in the web browser's tab. That's what we're going to do. It's also the place where you'll put the link to an external style sheet, which is what we're going to create, which is what this tutorial is all about. So inside this head tag is where we need to put that link, and also where we need to put that title. So I'm going to create a title tag right now. Inside that title tag, I'm going to put Marty's, let's say, website or web page, because it's just a single page. I'm going to close that, and that's good. So that's going to display on the web browser's tab. Okay, and in here I'm going to put a link tag. I'm not going to complete this just yet. I'm going to put this link tag in and come back to it later to show you the power of CSS. Oops, excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to leave those there. And let's come down here. So that completes our head tag. We're not going to put any meta tag data or any search engine data in here. It's not necessary for this tutorial, but know that this is where you would put it. It doesn't affect how your web page looks other than this title. It does affect what appears on the tab, but this information here is not going to affect the functionality of your web page. So now what have I got to do? Well, we got to make a body. Simply a body tag. Close the body tag. Put some spaces between the body tag because this is where everything's going to go. Alright, so I know that in my body tag I've got a div called container. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so here's my body. Within the body I've got this div right here. Okay, the big square on the outside, and I've called it container. So let's go ahead and do that. So notice I did the hashtag. You don't, in HTML you don't put the hashtag. You simply put div ID equals open and close quotation marks, and inside the quotation mark whatever it is that you want to call your div. So I'm going to call it container. I'm going to be able to reference that later in my CSS, but right now I'm going to go ahead and close this div. Okay, so there's a lot of things going to go inside our container, so I might as well give it a little room here. Alright, so what goes inside our container? Well, the first thing that goes inside our container is the header. So let's go ahead and create a div ID equals, put my quotation. Notice that the minute I put the first quotation, you probably can't see this, but the minute I put the first quotation, Notepad++ puts my second quotation and leaves the cursor in between them, which is a very nice feature. So I've done div ID equals, and now we're going to do header. Have to think for a minute. And I'm going to go ahead and close my header tag. Now let's go between the two header tags, and I'm going to put an H1 tag in there. That's all I'm going to put in there. We're going to do all our styling in the cascading style sheet, but for right now I want to put an H1 tag, excuse me, and let's see, inside the H1 tag I'm going to say, let me take a look because I've forgotten, Marty's sample website. I'm going to say Marty's sample page. Right, oops, let's go to the container, back up here, Marty's sample page. Okay, so now I'm going to close the H1 tag, And that's it. Done. The header is completed. Finished. So if you're following along at home on the video, you probably noticed the mistake that I made. When I closed my div ID header, I should have just closed the div. I used an HTML5 technique, which by using the header tag and the closing the header tag. So I'm going to go ahead and change that right now. Simply, we're going to come up here where I have header written, and I'm just going to put div. Notice that immediately it turns purple. The div, the two divs, the open and the close, which I told you before is just a beautiful feature in Notepad++. If I was paying attention when I first wrote the code, I wouldn't have seen the purple, and that should have given me the big heads up that I'd made a mistake. But now the code is clean and it's neat, and it's doing what I wanted it to do. So we've got our header, it's correct. Let's move on. Alright, so what comes after our header? Let's take a look. Whoops, wrong page. Let's go. We got after our header, we've got our div called contents. Within our div called contents, we've got nav and main. So we've got some paragraph information. We've got an unordered list in the navigation with home and about and contact as the list items. And then we've got a heading 3 with Marty's page and some paragraph text in the div called main. So we're going to go ahead and code that right now. Okay, we're going to leave the footer for the end. Let's go ahead and go back to our code. Excuse me. So come on down here. Let's see, we did the header. So now we have to do a div on the same level as the header. And that div will be called what? Oops, don't forget ID equals, open and close parentheses, and we're calling this contents. All right. So let's close that bracket. Let's go ahead and close this div. Notice this time I spelled div correctly, and notice the purple. Okay, I love that. It's telling me that I'm done. I did it correctly. It's open and closed. I'm going to put the cursor between the two, the open and the closed div, and leave some room because I'm going to put my unordered list, or my div called navigation. Let's put that in first. Div, oops, excuse me. Div ID equals quotation nav. Outside the quotation, I'm going to close that bracket, and I'm going to go ahead and close this div. Now, I need something inside this div. So inside this div, once again I'm going to tab because I want to keep everything really nice and neat. You'll see when the code is done, I'll show you how easy it is to read once you've got it all tabbed and indented and set up nice like this. So I'm going to add an unordered list tag. So it's simply UL for the unordered list, and then I'm going to go ahead and close the UL tag. Put my cursor in between. Inside the UL, I got some list items. So I'm going to go ahead and hit tab, hit LI, close that LI, and then inside the list items, I want to be my hyperlinks, my references for the other page is in my site. Now, for this tutorial's sake, we're only building one page, so these links aren't going to go anywhere, but I still want them to act like links. So there's a little technique that we use for doing that when you're developing, and I'll show you that right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is add an A tag, because this is a link. So open A, I'm going to put a space, and I'm going to tell it that I'm going to create a class here. Class equals, and I'm going to put the open parentheses, and I'm going to put selected. I'm outside my parentheses. Okay, what I've just done now is I've set up a situation where I can reference this class with my CSS so that whatever page the customer's on or your viewer is on, I can make that link, whether it be home, contact, or about, I can make that bold or blue or green or red or underlined or whatever styling I want to add to that to let the person know that I'm actually on that page. Okay, So that's class selected. Now I have to add the hyperlink, which is href equals, and in this case, of course, you have to do the open and close parentheses. In this case, this is where you would put your URL, so www. whatever, or if you had the web pages all in the same folder, you could simply reference the page name, home, about, contact, whatever it is. But in this case, I really don't want to go anywhere, but I want the list item to act like a hyperlink, so I'm going to use the pound symbol. That will send it to nowhere, but it will make it act like a hyperlink. So there's my href to the pound symbol, and now I'm going to close this. Now I have to put my list item, and I'm going to say this is home. Okay, now I'm going to close my A tag. Notice the purple right away. It's got the first A and the second A, and it's showing me the whole first attribute or element. It's called an element, and there's the second one, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. And now the last piece is I have to close the list, so I'm going to go ahead and close the li tag. And notice the minute I type li, what does it do? Highlights that, so I know to close that. Okay, good, that's done. Okay, so now what can I do here is I need to do this 2 more times, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this line of code. It's going to be a little bit different because I don't need my class selected, but I'm going to go ahead and Control C. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to hit a space and hit Control V. I'm going to remove my class selected, but leave everything else. And I like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste this one more time. Control C. I'm going to copy this. Control V. Okay, so I've got my 3 list items. Let's change this to about, and let's change this to contact. Okay, there's my unordered list with my 3 list items, home, about, and contact. Okay, when we display this in HTML, you'll see some problems, but we're going to solve those problems in cascading style sheets. Okay, so I'm just doing some housekeeping right now, getting rid of some spaces. I told you I like a lot of spaces so that I can kind of see what I'm doing, but I got too many spaces right now. So there's my unordered list. I'm in my nav. I've closed my nav. Let me delete some of these spaces here. Okay, good. So now I've got my nav done. What else do I need to do? Well, within that same container, within that same container where my nav is, so I'm going to be still in the container, I have this div called main, and I've got a heading 3 and some paragraph. So let's go ahead and build that real quick. Okay, whoops. Alright, so now I want to be outside of that div. So now where do I need to be? I still need to be in contents, so I am. I'm still within contents, but I'm outside of nav. That's where I need to be. So let's go ahead and make a div, and we're going to give it a name, and this name we're going to call it main, right? Okay, and so let's close the div main. Remember, we're just closing a div. And I'll make a little space between it. So the first thing I want to do is add heading tags. They're called H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. There's 6 H tags in HTML, and they each give you a different font size and a different font weight and a different font thickness. So H1 being the biggest, H6 being the smallest, but it really allows you to style your website nicely if you use these heading tags. So I'm going to go ahead and make an H3 tag here, and let me just double check what I called it. I called it Marty's page. So Marty's page. close my H3 tag. That's it. Okay, now paragraph tags. I want to save a little time on this tutorial, so I'm going to show you an open and close paragraph tab. It's very, very simple. There's an open and close paragraph tab. I'm going to put some stuff in between there, make my life easy. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go copy my text from a previous tutorial that I've done, just to make my life easier. But just know that that's an open and close paragraph tag. I'm going to go over here and click this. You see Marty's page. You see it's really basically the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and click this. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Let's see. I'm going to come back and go back to the page that we're coding. I'm going to highlight this line of code right here, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that, Control V. So all I've really done is, let me make sure I indent this the way I want to indent it. Okay, I put 3 paragraph tags and you'll see how they display when we display them, and I've got a heading 3 as Marty's page. We're going to add some cascading styles to this to maybe give it some padding so that it's off the edge of the border and so on and so forth. But for right now, we're looking pretty good. Okay, let's finish our HTML. The last piece of the puzzle is what? We have to create this footer div, right? And that's all. And within the footer div, we're going to create a H6 heading tag with copyright 2015 Marty. I'm also going to show you, you can't see it in the, because I didn't draw it in my image, but we're going to put the copyright symbol, the C within the circle. I'm going to show you a kind of a slick technique for creating that copyright symbol. Okay, so let's go back to our code, Notepad++, and I hope you can see the code well. I know you can't see the top is cut off a little bit, but you can kind of see where we're at. And now we are still within the contents div right here. We're still within the contents div, but we're outside of we are within the container div. That's where I want to be. Let me delete this, delete this, delete this. So I want to really be in the same kind of level as the header. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to hit space here, and I'm going to come here, and now this is where I'm going to put my footer. Okay, so really you notice that the footer is in the same range as the header and is in the same range of contents, but I'm not in contents. Okay, contents is from here to here, so I'm not in the contents. What's in the contents is the nav and the main. Okay, but I want to be outside of contents, but I want to be inside a container, so that's going to be right here. So I'm going to go ahead and create my div. Div ID equals what? Footer, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put my open quote. It puts my close quote for me. I'm going to type in footer. I'm going to close that bracket, and good. I'm going to go ahead and close this div, and we're good there. And I'm going to make a couple spaces because I need to put my copyright in here. So I'm going to hit tab. So this is going to be a heading 6 tag. So I'm going to go ahead and make a heading H6 tag. All right, and then I want to put copyright Marty 2015. So first of all, I want the copyright symbol. So I'm going to put a couple spaces. You don't need the spaces, but I'm going to put the spaces. And what I want to do is, there is no, if you look on your keyboard, you're not going to find a copyright symbol. But if you hit the Shift 7 or the ampersand key and the word copy, your browser will display that as the copyright symbol. Okay, and then I'm going to type copyright Marty 2015. Okay, so that's what I want to display in my H6 tag. I'm going to close that H6 tag right now, and that's it. Our HTML is done. You know what? Let's go ahead and take a look at it in the browser. I'm going to go ahead and save this document. Good. And it's saved now, so let's go ahead and take a look at it in the browser. Here's my browser. It's unfair that I did that. I'm going to go ahead and do what? Let's go to one of my other pages just because, oh, I'm not connected to the internet. That's fine. Okay, so what I can do is, I'm coming off screen here. I know you can't see me, but I've got my Tutorial4 HTML file. I'm going to drag it over, and in Chrome, if you want to display something in Chrome that you've created on in your local host or on your hard drive, you just simply take the file, drag it over, and drop it. And once you drop it, it displays. Okay, so basically that's the page, and that's the HTML that we created. I'm going to go ahead and drag this window down a little bit so we can see it better. First thing I want you to remember is we told it to put a title in this tab, and the title we told it to put is Marty's webpage, and it did. Then we gave it a header, which is this area right here, and we said put Marty's sample page in there. Then we have a container, which is right here, the main part of this page, and we have a nav portion and a main portion right here, and then we have a footer with the copyright. Okay, and there's our copyright symbol. I don't know if you can see it or not, it's pretty small, but that is our copyright symbol. But it doesn't look anything like my roadmap, does it? Well, this is where the power of CSS is going to come in, and we're going to style this right now and make our page look like that. Let's take a look at it real quick again. There's the page now as it stands, and it's correct, but the first thing I want to do is I'm going to have to add a blue background to the header. I want to center the Marty sample page. I need that text to be white. I want the underlines to disappear from my list items, or my unordered list. I want the bullet points to disappear. I want this to be flush to the left. I want this main div to be up here, even with the navigation div, and the copyright to be on the bottom in a blue footer, and I want that text to be white. So let's go ahead and do that now with an external cascading. Okay, let's let the fun begin. This is where we're going to start coding our external cascading style sheet, and we are going to link this sheet, tutorial4.css, to our tutorial4.html. I like to call them the same names. It just is good common practice. You'll notice that I created a new sheet, and I've called it Tutorial4. Notepad++, put the extension .css because I told it I was making a cascading style sheet. So what do we need to know about cascading style sheets? Well, the very important thing to know about cascading style sheets is that there's a CSS rule set, and that consists of a selector and a declaration block. So the first selector is going to be body. Okay, that's the first thing we want to style. And I'm going to go ahead and click in here, and I'm going to type in body. Excuse me. Now, again, we use our tab to indent. I have to put an open and close curly bracket. That's going to be next to your letter P, it's the shift key to get the uppercase, and you're going to get your open and close curly bracket. Notice that once you put the open curly bracket, Notepad++ puts the closed one for you. Thank you, Notepad++. So I'll put a couple spaces. I'm going to tab to indent, and now I'm going to actually write my declaration. Okay, and so the declaration consists of a property and a value. The property is separated from the value by a colon, and every CSS rule has to end in a semicolon. It actually ends in this curly bracket right here, but within the declaration is going to end with a semicolon. So it's going to be simply this. So what are we doing right now with the body? Well, all we really need to do for the body is give it a background color. So let's go ahead and give it a background color. Notice, as I start typing, Notepad++ is so smart. It knows CSS so well. It knows it much better than I do, and it knows that if I type the word back, there's certain CSS properties or values that that I can use, and background color is the second one on the list. I can use my arrow to reach that and hit tab. It's going to fill that in for me. I told you I have to separate the property from the value with a colon. And my value now, we're going to talk about hex codes here in just a second, but right now I'm just going to type in the word gray. okay, and that's going to give me a background color of gray. Remember, I have to end my declaration with a semicolon, and then of course the curly bracket, which is already put in for me, and that's it. That's my first style done. Alright, this is great. We've now styled our entire body to have a background of gray. So what do we want to do next? Let's take a look at our actual page, and our actual page is right here. And so now this background, or this body section, will all be gray, darkish gray. The next thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead, and I don't like this underline right here. Now these are A tags, okay? It's in our unordered list, but if you remember correctly in our code, we gave each of these an A tag and then an href for the hyperlink, and it's displaying with an underline. I don't want an underline. Let's take a look at the code really quickly in HTML. So in HTML, you can see here's my list, here's my A tag, right? And so here's my href. Any hyperlink is displayed with the underline. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of that. So it's simple. So I'm going to declare, whoops, not above, what it is that I want to style. I'm going to open my curly bracket. I'm going to make a couple spaces, and then within the curly bracket I'm going to write text decoration, text -d, and you'll see that decoration is highlighted, so I can simply hit tab, and I want that to be none. Don't forget you have to put your colon, type in none, semicolon, and that's it. That's going to take care of that. We can't see the results because I'm not linked yet, but I promise you that's all I wanted to do here. Next, simply, I know I'm going to cast, excuse me, before I get to my divs, I want to do my paragraph tag real quick. So P is for the paragraph tag, and I'm going to put the open and close curly brackets, and within the open and close curly brackets I just want a little bit of padding, and I really want padding left. So let me see how I can do that. What did I just do there? I got rid of my A and I got rid of my curly bracket, which is no good. Excuse me, it's the fat thumb syndrome. Alright, so now I'm going to delete that other one, and we should be okay now. Okay, good. So padding, but I don't want padding. I want padding left, because that's where my text is going to be. So if I put this in an L, you see I get left. That's what I want. Don't forget your colon, and let's just make it 5 pixels. That's about right. I just want it off the margin just a little bit, and I know this will take care of that. Don't forget to put your semicolon. So let's start doing some divs right now. Okay, so my first div, if we look at our page, is our container, right? That's this big div on the outside, right? That's the div we want to right now start styling. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to give it a fixed width. We're going to tell it how wide we want it to be, and we want that container to be centered in the page. So there's a really slick way that we can do that. Okay, so most people's browsers are you know, a safe width is 800. Okay, very, very safe width. Most people's width of their screens is much greater than 800. Height might not be, but the width is always greater than 800. So we're going to set that up for 800 pixels wide, and we're going to make the margins on the left and the right be set to auto, and that's going to center this container. So let's go ahead and do my code for that. Okay, very simple. Now remember, we gave this div an ID of container. To reference that, we actually put the pound symbol and the word container. Container. Good. Okay. And I'm going to hit a tab. I'm going to do an open and close bracket. And I'm going to put a couple spaces. Now, let's go ahead and put, how about a width? No, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to do a background color. And again, there's my background color. I'm going to hit tab. Now, okay, if I type gray, then the background color of the container is going to be the same color as the body. That's not what I want. I want some contrast. So in this case, I want to use a shade of gray. Well, how do we do that in HTML? You have to use hex codes. Okay, so hex codes are codes that use hexadecimal values to represent the numbers. I'm not going to get into the math that's involved in it, but you'll see numbers like EF, 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 or E3, E3, E3. That's a shade of gray that I particularly like, and I use it a lot. But so you don't have to memorize your hexadecimal numbers for your colors. There's some great websites that I've listed in the description of this YouTube video, and I'm going to pull one up right now. I like color-hex.com. And what the great thing is about colorhex.com is that it remembers your favorite color. So it remembers me. Basically, it puts a cookie on your machine. It remembers the colors and the shades that you used before. So I'm building a website that had this color scheme right here, and so it had all that. So what I'm going to do right now is I can just scroll down and look for the other shades of gray, and we'll just get down here, and I don't really see the one that I want, but here's the E3, E3, E3 that I told you about. That's a particularly nice shade of gray. I don't know, can you see that? I didn't pull it up high enough. There it is, right there. E3, 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 right? So you can click on this and get a better view of it. You can simply highlight and copy and paste your numbers if that's what you want to do. I'm just going to simply come back here and type in the hex value that I want. And now, in order to type in the hex value, you must start with a pound symbol, okay? And you're telling the browser that what comes next is a hex value for colors. So I like E3, E4, E9. Okay, very close to E3, E3, E9. I mean E3, but this is just a little different shade, and so that's what I'm going to prefer. So don't forget to put your semicolon at the end of the declaration. And at this point in time, I'm going to give it a width. We talked about this, and my width is going to be 800 pixels. And we're going to do margin left and margin right. Auto. That's going to set the margins to auto. And center my container in the middle of the page, which is what I really want. Okay, so that should do it for the container. Let's go ahead and do, let's go ahead and do our, how about if we do our header? Okay, there's a lot of styling we want to do in the header. So how do I tell CSS I'm working with the header? Simply hashtag header. Okay, and now we use our open and curly brackets. We put the open, it puts the close for us. Beautiful. Indent, make everything nice and neat and easy to read. And so now what do we want to do with the header? Okay, well, let's just take a look real quick. Right now, if we look at our header right now, you can see that it's Marty's sample page, it's a heading 2 tag, it's justified to the left, there's no background color, nothing. So let's add some style to this page real quick. Okay, so for my header, we're going to add a background color, and we're not going to use a hex code here. We could, generally when you start coding, you will use hex colors because it gives you much more variety, but just for the sake of expedience, I'm just going to use the simple color blue. So my property is background color, my value is blue, right? Simple. Okay, so there's my background color. Now if I type in the word color, that's going to display the color of the text. And now I'm going to use a hex code. I could write white, but this is actually less keystrokes, so why not? Hex code for white is FF, FF, FF. Okay? However, anytime you have 6 characters the same in hexadecimal, you can represent it by 3 characters. So if I simply type FFF, that's the same as, or cascading style sheets and HTML see it as the same as FF, FF, FF. Okay? Don't forget your semicolon. So that's going to color the text. This is an interesting little fact here. I'm going to give it a width. And now we had 800 pixels. I could do pixels, but I'm going to just make it 98%, semicolon, and then let me give it a height. So we're kind of consistent. I'm going to just say 46 pixels. Now I have to do my margins again. So margin left. If I didn't do my margins, I would get a header that's all the way to the left. It's 98%, but it's going to be all the way to the left. So let's do margins. And remember, it's auto. And margin right, auto. Okay, and we want to align our header centered. So let's just give it a text align, and you'll see if I put text. Oh, let me try that again because I messed up. Text hyphen align. You see it right there. Here's my tab, my colon, and now I can. So that's my that's my property. My value is center. Right, and it with a semicolon. Okay. And now, this is something that we haven't really talked about, but sometimes you want to give your text a font family. For example, in this case I want to display this in Arial, right? So the code for that is font family, and I'm going to go ahead and put a colon there, and I'm going to tell it Arial. But I want to give it some options in case the person's computer doesn't have Arial. So Helvetica is kind of the Mac version of Arial. And if it doesn't have either of them, I want it to look for a sans serif font, which means without serif. If you look carefully at this text, the little lines at the bottom of the text or the lines at the top of the text that give an illusion of a line all the way across, those are called serifs. So sans serif or without serif is an option for text that most people have on their computer. So we're giving it the font family, and let's just do a font size, font hyphen size, there it is, and colon, and we'll say 12 pixels, semicolon. So that's going to be it for our header in our container, and so we'll be right back and do our CSS for the rest of our page. Alright, so we just finished applying the styles to our header section. So the next section we're going to style is the content section. So we reference that with the pound symbol and the word contents. Open and close curly brackets. And how do we want to style our contents page? Well, we want to start with the background color. And we want to use our same hex value that we've been using. So we remember it by now, right? It's E3, E4, E9. And we're going to use our semicolon to close it. After the background color, let's go ahead and add some padding. This is just going to give us some room around the edge of the contents div. And so I'm going to say padding 30 pixels, 10 pixels on the top, 0 pixels on the right, and 10 pixels on the bottom. Put a semicolon there, and let's just center that. Since we did some padding, we can center it margin left and right auto. And margin right auto. Not there though. With the fat thumb syndrome, I think it was. Margin right. Auto. Alright, I'm concerned that my margin left is not blue. That's very disconcerting, and I know why. It's because I don't have a colon after padding. That's messing everything up. Now we're good. And that's one of the beautiful things about Notepad++, that if you pay attention to what's going on, the color schemes will let you know if you've made an error right when you're writing the code. So I really, really appreciate that. So that's our contents. We're pretty much done with that. Let's go ahead and do our nav div. So we reference that by #nav, open and close curly brackets, put a few spaces in there, and let's tab to indent, and let's start with a width. So I want to give it a width of just 180 pixels. Now remember, we're going to get this, the nav div, I made a navy div, we're going to make the nav div sit next to the main div. We want those two to be on the same level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a code called float. And I want the nav div to float on the left. And you know I'm going to make the main div float on the right. Let's go ahead and give it a background color. We're going to use our same background color that we've been using. Hex code E3, E4, E9. That's my hex code right there. After the background color, let's go ahead and give a border around this. And I want the border width to be 1 pixel. What did I do there? Border width. 1 pixel. I'm going to make the border color. I think in the page that I showed you, I had the border color white. I've done this tutorial a couple times, and I think I'd like to make the color different right now. So I'm going to make it the same as my header and footer. So I don't need to use a hex code. I can simply make the value, be blue with a semicolon. And then finally, I'm going to make a border style of solid. Border style solid. Okay, so I think that's good for our nav. Let's go ahead and get out of here. I'm going to delete the extra spaces. Perfect. And let's go with our unordered list, right? So we've gotten rid of our A tag, we've gotten rid of the underline. But I still have bullet points in my unordered list. I don't like those bullet points. I don't want them in my web page, so I have to get rid of them. So it's a very simple line of code to do it in CSS. So you have to reference the nav div, and then you have to reference the unordered list. Then you're going to open and close the curly brackets. With inside the nav and the unordered list, we're going to just simply tell it to a list hyphen style hyphen type, and we're going to make it none. That's our value. Okay, whoops. That's our value. And why don't we give it a little bit of padding to move that list away from the margins. We'll make it 5 pixels. Alright, so that should be the unordered list taken care of. So let's talk about our class called selected. Now, if you remember, our class called selected, we're still in a div. Oops, we're still in a div that we ID'd as nav. So I'm going to use hashtag nav. But now I'm going to use dot selected. Why dot? Well, because I created a class. And you always reference a class with a period prior to the name of the class. So I'm going to do my open and close curly braces, and I'm going to go ahead and just set my font weight and I'm going to set that to be bold. So now whatever page you're on, whether it be the home page, the contact page, or the about page, that list item is going to appear bold. That's what we want. So that's what we've just done with the class selected. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're almost done. So what we want to do now is let's apply styles to our main div. So pound main, and a couple tabs to indent, open and close curly brackets, tab to indent, and I'm going to go ahead and give a background color of, you guessed it, E3, E4, E9. So go ahead and type in background color. There it is. I don't have to type it out. Background color. Hex code, so I'm going to start with the pound symbol, E3, E4, E9, semicolon. That's good. So I'm also going to give it a width. Now this is something you got to kind of think about for a minute. I'm giving it a width of 560 pixels wide. Well, my container is 800 pixels wide, right? My nav div is 180 pixels wide within that container, and there's padding inside that container of 30 pixels around the side. So 30 pixels, 30 pixels, that's 60. 30 pixels, that's 120, plus 580, plus the 180, it gives us a 20 pixel margin. Okay, so you got to think like that when you're designing these pages. What you can do in the beginning is you can just try a number, you can kind of guess a number if you have to, and you can always come back in and change it if your page doesn't display the way you want it to. But I'm confident that 560 is going to work just fine for us. So 560 pixels. Now, we have to do this. Float right. This is going to allow our two divs within the content divs, and those are the nav div and the main div. It's going to allow them to reside side by side rather than on top of each other like it is right now in our just HTML. Okay? And so now let's just go ahead and add the border, I don't know, color. We're going to go with blue. And we're going to go with border width. And I think 1 pixel is what we did on the other one. So we'll be consistent. And border style was solid. I think we have a good web page. What are we missing? Our footer. Our footer. Let's take a second and do our footer. Okay, we are in the home stretch. So let's just do a little bit more. We have to style our footer. That'll only take us a second. So simply come down here below our main div and hashtag footer. Tell CSS we're styling the footer. I'm going to put a little indent. Open and close hashtags, drop a couple spaces so I can start putting my code in. So for the footer, I'm going to give it a height of 20 pixels. Oh, look what I did. Okay, let me come down here. Fat thumbs again. Height of 20 pixels. I'm going to give it a width of the same as my header, 98%. Remember? Okay. I'm going to give it our background color is going to be blue, right? The same as my header. And I'm going to make my, let's see what I want to do here. The text color remember I've got some text in there, the copyright. So if I simply type color, and then I can write white, but I like to do the hex value for white, which is 3Fs. Okay, so boy, here's a little quiz. What have I left out of the footer? What's going to happen? Well, two things. So what I want to do now is I want to link my cascading style sheets. When I link my cascading style sheet, I want to take a look at what's going on. There's going to be an error in the footer, and I'm going to come back and show you how quick and easy it is to fix it using external cascading style sheets. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So what I want to do is save it, kind of out of the screen, but I'll show you real quick. These buttons here are grayed out right now because I have saved it. If I was to come in here and simply make a change, you'll notice that these buttons are blue, meaning that the latest changes haven't been saved. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that extra space. I don't really need it, and I'm going to go ahead and make my save. Now my file is saved. Okay, so now what do I need to do? Well, our page is looking good, our code is looking good. I have to connect them. Remember this link tag that we had? Alright, well, I have to repair this link tag. I have to actually put in where this CSS style sheet is. I have to give it the name of the style sheet, and I actually have to give a link to it. So here's what I'm going to write. So there's my link tag. I'm going to actually get rid of that, close bracket, and I'm going to type in the word rel for relative equals, and then I'm going to put quotation, and it puts the close quotation for me. I'm going to make it a style sheet. Okay, and then the type of style sheet is going to be equal to, and remember, open and close quotation, is a text / CSS. That's the type of style sheet it is. Okay, now here's the key. Where is this? What is the name of it? What am I linking to? Well, we're going to use a hyperlink reference, href. Okay, and the href equals, now here's where you would type your URL, but because my style sheet is going to reside in the same folder as my HTML is, I don't have to write the long URL. I can just simply type the name of the style sheet, and the name of the cascading style sheet is, now remember, I used it, I don't know, can you see it? You probably can't. I used a capital T, so you must use a capital T when you're referencing in this. Okay, so tutorial4.css, and that's it. And that is my, oh, except I made a mistake. I should have put that in quotations. I'll go ahead and put that back in quotations. Delete the extra quotations when I'm done. You know, sometimes Notepad++ being your friend makes it a little harder, but that's going to do it for us, tutorial CSS. So now we're linked. So now what do we have to do? Well, let's save our files. Now this button here is the Save All button. It's a really good button if you're working on a cascading style sheet and an HTML at the same time. This way you can save all your work at one time. So I think we're done. Other than the intentional mistakes I made with the footer. And so let's go ahead and take a look at our file. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a browser. And that's our page, right? So what's going on with our page? Well, why does it look the same? Why are my bullet points there? What's going on? I haven't refreshed it. So let's reload the page and see what happens. Whoa, there we go. Okay, well, something happened. I've got a gray background, I've got a blue border around my nav, my home is bolded because of the selected class that we added to that. You'll notice if I click on any of these links, they turn red. You'll notice that this is all set up really pretty simply. But you know what's interesting is that my footer is all the way to the left and not to the right. Why is that? Well, because I forgot to center it by using the margin left, margin right. And what else is going on here? Well, these floats, this is a float left and float right. This footer doesn't know to clear these two floats before it starts displaying. It really just wants to display in order. If we tell it to clear the two floats, it'll display down here. So let's go ahead and go back to our cascading style sheet and just fix what we need to fix. And watch how quick we can do this. So in the footer, I'm going to go ahead and center, first of all, my footer. Margin left is auto. And my margin right is auto. And now the last thing I have to do is clear these two floats and our page will be finished. So I'm going to come up here. For some reason I like to put that on the top of my cascading style sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and put clear. And I'm going to tell it what to clear. I want to clear both. Okay? I really love what we've done. Let's go ahead and save our file. I'm going to try and move this down so you can kind of see the buttons. There's my save. I'm going to hit save all. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up our browser again. Okay, it looks still kind of funky, right? Well, let's reload the page and see what happens when it reads our cascading style sheet. Oh! That looks so much better. That's what we were looking for. Okay, well, thank you for watching Marty's tutorials. I hope you've learned something. Please come back and visit our other tutorials. It's been a pleasure. Once again, thank you for visiting Marty's tutorials. I will be putting the files for this website design tutorial under the description. You can download, there'll be a link to download the files. There'll be an HTML file, there'll be a CSS file, and there'll be some information on how to download Notepad++, as well as some other helpful hints. So thank you once again, and please come back and join us for some other tutorials.